So, Kisah Cupcake Mata Panda is a young adult and children's novel telling a story about a student named Nurul Saleha who loves taking an order of her cupcake business for her school year-end party. The story is telling the struggle of her business and the tiredness of working to get all of the orders done by time. So, this story is written by Aja Fazla. Aja Fazla is a Malaysian author who is best known for her contribution in young adults and also children's literature. So our group had chosen Kisah Cupcake Mata Panda as our translation material. So from this short story, we had chosen page 2 until page 10 to translate as our excerpt. So in these pages, we can see the characterization of Nur Saliha as a responsible student who owned a cupcake business, and also the characterization of Vidya, who is her friend that is unreliable and also overconfident. So in these pages, we can take a look on how Nur Saliha is responsibly taking orders and also wanting to complete it, while Vidya is making things worse for her as she has been taking an extra orders without consulting Nur Saliha first, which making things worse by her also overconfidently volunteering herself to make the vanilla sex cupcake. This has been this is the rising action of the story, where the story will take place later. But since we only taking from page 2 until 10, we will not be touching that in this overview. That's all.
The atmosphere was filled with noisy chatter and bursts of laughter as everyone chatted away. That was the usual scene after the exams had ended. Only a handful of students sat quietly with books in front of them, not textbook anymore, but now free to enjoy reading their favorite novels or comics. Nurul Saleha was busy jotting down the orders she had received for the class year-end party. So far, 5 classes had placed orders with her. 2 sets of red velvet cupcakes, 2 sets of carrot cupcakes, and 1 set of vanilla cupcakes. A wide smile spread across her face. 5 sets are enough. Officially, orders are now closed, she whispered to herself, glancing at her friends who were completely absorbed in the novels they were holding. Seha, called Vidya, appearing out of nowhere before giving Nurul Saleha a pat on the shoulder. Since the teacher was no longer coming into class, Vidya had taken the opportunity to wander around as she pleased. What? Nurul Saleha raised an eyebrow at her grinning friend, who was squirming and shifting from side to side as though she desperately needed to use the bathroom. Are you making cupcakes for our class party? No, Nurul Saleha replied. I am only bringing fruit. We have been bringing velvet cakes every week. I'm sure everyone is getting tired of them. In that case, let me bring something instead. I'd like to make these cupcakes. Aren't they cute? Shall we make them together? Vidya said as she showed a picture of panda-faced cupcake. Suddenly, Choma laughed from behind them. A panda? Well, it does resemble your species, Vidya. He teased before running away, leaving Vidya putting in annoyance. I already have a lot of orders, and they happen to be for the same day. Come on, let's make them together. We'll prepare your orders as well as my panda cakes. Please, Vidya pleaded while looking at Nurul Saleha with innocent eyes of a kitten begging for sympathy. Adrina and Umi can help too, Vidya added, pointing towards her 2 friends. Huh? What? Adrina and Umi asked together, because they had no idea what was happening. We will help Seha make the cupcakes on Thursday afternoon. Sure, but we'll arrive a little late, because we have an environmental club meeting. Vidya looked hopefully at Nurul Saleha while waiting for her answer. Alright. Yay, Vidya shouted happily. Come with me this afternoon to buy the baking ingredients, okay? Wow, this is so heavy. My arms are going to fall off, Vidya complained, struggling under the weight of the groceries she was carrying. Didn't you just say that people can carry loads weighing up to twice their own body weight? This don't even weigh 10 kilograms and you are already complaining? Nurul Saleha replied with a smile as she listened to her friends grumbling. Vidya gave an embarrassed grin. Just moments earlier, she had proudly claimed that she was more than capable of carrying the groceries all the way to Nurul Saleha's house. Zeha, why don't we bake at my house instead? My house is much closer than yours. Yours requires a 20 minutes bus ride. If I carry this all the way there, my arms really will fall off. Nurul Saleha paused for a moment. Do you have the necessary equipment? An oven? A mixer? Don't worry, I have everything we need. We can chat later, okay? Alright then, let's leave the groceries at your house first. But I will need to ask my mother for permission as well. Vidya smiled and started walking towards her house. Great! Let's get started! Vidya exclaimed enthusiastically as Nurul Saleha arrived wearing an apron and a chef's hat, just like a contestant on MasterChef. What should we do first? First, let's check all the ingredients and equipment. Before that, switch on the oven to make sure it's working properly. Okay, Vidya quickly rushed over to turn on the oven. We are going to make 2 batches of red velvet cupcakes, 2 batches of carrot cupcakes, and 1 batch of vanilla cupcakes. What cake are you planning to make? 1 batch of Panda cupcakes for our classes, and 2 batches of carrot cupcakes for Teacher Maharani. Nurul Saleha looked slightly surprised. How did we end up adding 2 more batches? I thought we only agreed on 1 that day. Teacher Maharani suddenly asked for it. How could I refuse? At that time, you weren't in class and had disappeared to who knows where. For a moment, Nurul Saleha rubbed her worried, frowning face. Why didn't you tell me earlier? These ingredients aren't enough to make 2 more sets of cupcakes. Besides, I only bought just enough carrots. Vidya grinned sheepishly like a rotting cockle. Let's just buy more. After all, the shop is close by. It's a good thing we are doing this at my house, so it's easy to go to the shop. Imagine if we were doing this at your house. It would be definitely chaotic. Nurul Saleha took a deep breath, but finally nodded in agreement anyway. Is that all? No other additions? Yes, that's all. Alright, let's make the vanilla cupcakes first. After that, we'll head to the shop again. What if just one of us just goes to the shop? Let me make the vanilla cupcakes. Besides, it's really easy. Are you sure you can make them? Nurul Saleha looked at Vidya with a frown on her forehead. Of course. Besides, the other day, I already saw how you make vanilla cupcakes. It's the easiest cupcakes to make. Vidya's words sounded full of confidence. Indeed, the other day, after Nurul Saleha won the cupcake making competition at Sri Bangsa School, the life skills subject teacher organized a cooking workshop and Nurul Saleha was appointed as a mentor to everyone.
So basically, the short story presents a key translation challenge on how to faithfully convey a highly localized Malaysian culture setting to an international audience without sacrificing the readability. To solve this, we carefully balance local authenticity with global clarity across 4 key strategies, demonstrating that effective translation is an act of cultural mediation rather than a rigid word-for-word substitution. First, we utilize idiomatic adaptation by changing the Malay idiom "sengih seperti kerang busuk" into "wait ya grin sheepishly." This is because a literal translation, like "grin like a rotting cockle," would confuse or alienate an international audience unfamiliar with the imagery. So by choosing sheepishly, we achieve functional equivalence ensuring the reader instantly understands the intended emotion of embrace, guilty amusement in the story. Secondly, the strategy of foreignization was applied to the phrase Teacher Mahani, which is originally Cikgu Mahani. Instead of westernizing it to Mrs. or Miss Mahani, we deliberately preserved the distinct honorific norms of Malaysian school culture, where addressing an educator by their title, followed by their personal name, is an essential marker of local respect. Thirdly, we use partial translation for Sri Bangsa School to create a conceptual bridge for the reader. By keeping the local proper noun Sri Bangsa intact, the text firmly anchors the story's geographical identity. Meanwhile, translating Sekolah into School provides instant clarity, so global readers immediately understand the institutional context. And last but not least, we rely on modulation in dialogue like only bought just enough, and it would be definitely chaotic. Because Malay and English handle emphasis differently, we altered the grammatical structure to give the dialogue a snappy, yet full English cadence. So this effectively highlights the sharp contrast between Nurul's practical stress and Widya's breezy, overconfident attitude. So ultimately, by deploying foreignization to protect the story's Malaysian soul alongside adaptation and modulation to smooth out reading friction, we beautifully demonstrated how to deliver true cultural meaning, making the text locally authentic yet globally accessible.
Now I will move on to the literary analysis of this excerpt. One of the main themes presented in this passage is friendship and cooperation. Throughout the conversation, Widya and Nurul Saleha work together to prepare for baking cupcakes. Although Widya complains about carrying the groceries, Nurul Saleha responds with humor instead of frustration. This shows that their friendship is built on trust, understanding, and mutual support. We can also see this when Nurul Saleha agrees to bake at Widya's house after making sure that the necessary equipment is available. Their willingness to communicate and compromise highlights the importance of teamwork and cooperation. Another significant theme is humility. At the beginning of the excerpt, Vidya confidently believes that she can carry all the groceries without any difficulty. However, she quickly realizes that the bag are much heavier than she expected and jokingly says that her arms are going to fall off. This moment reminds readers that it is important to recognize our own limitations and not be overly confident. In terms of literary devices, the author makes effective use of dialogue. Rather than describing the characters directly, their personalities are revealed through their conversations. Vidya comes across as cheerful, energetic, and slightly impulsive, while Nurul Saleha appears calm, practical, and patient. This makes their friendship feel genuine and realistic. The author also uses humor, particularly through Vidya's exaggerated complaint that her arms are going to fall off. This is an example of exaggeration or exaggeration, which creates a light-hearted atmosphere and makes the interaction between the two friends more entertaining for readers. Lastly, the overall tone of the excerpt is warm and playful. The casual conversations and friendly teasing create an enjoyable atmosphere that reflects the close relationship between the characters. As readers, we can easily relate to their interactions because they resemble everyday conversations between close friends. Overall, the themes and literary devices work together to create an engaging story that emphasizes the value of friendship, cooperation, and humility while maintaining a fun and relatable narrative.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Nurul Hana binti Mat Yuslan. So this week my group have translated the short story called Kisah, Cupcake, Mata Panda by Aja Fazla. So from this week task, I had faced some problem in translating a certain words because I wanted it to fit into the targeted text or the targeted language, which is English. So to tackle this problem, I had used the technique of literal translation, modulation, adaptation, transposition, and also amplification in order to help me to perfectly translating the original work. So from this task, I have found that translating a short story is quite similar to translating a poem. However, it is a bit easier than translating a poem due to differences in literary devices. So, um, so from this task, I have found that. So from this task, I have found that by using all these techniques, it helps in conveying the ideas of the original work into the targeted languages, and it can be perfectly be understood by the targeted audience. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Finally, I would like to share my personal reflection. Through this assignment, I realized that translating a literary text involves much more than simply changing words from one language to another. It requires understanding the cultural context, the emotions of the characters, and the author's writing style. One of the biggest challenges I faced was translating expressions that are culturally embedded in Malay, such as geram sendiri and seperti kucing menagih simpati. A literal translation would have sounded unnatural in English, so I had to choose expressions that conveyed the same meaning while remaining fluent and appropriate. So this experience has helped me to appreciate the importance of balancing accuracy with readability. It also improved my understanding of how translation choices can influence readers' interpretation of a literary text.
For my reflection, I found that translating this excerpt was more challenging than I initially expected because literary translation involves much more than simply changing words from one language to another. One of the main factors that influenced my translation decisions was the cultural context. Some expressions in Malay, such as "boleh tercabut tangan saya," are commonly used to exaggerate how heavy something is. Instead of translating it literally, I chose the English expression, "my arms are going to fall off," because it conveys the same humorous effect while sounding natural to English readers. I also paid close attention to the narrative voice. The original story has a friendly, casual, and playful tone, so I wanted my translation to preserve that atmosphere. Since most of the excerpt consists dialogue, I made sure that the conversation sounded natural and reflected the close friendship between Widya and Nurul Saliha. Another influence was the use of literary elements, especially humor and characterization. I tried to maintain the personalities of the characters through their speech, ensuring that Vidya remained cheerful and energetic while Nurul Saleha appeared calm and patient. The biggest challenge was translating culturally embedded meanings and idiomatic expressions. A literal translation would have sounded awkward and might not have conveyed the intended emotion or humor. Therefore, I had to balance accuracy with readability, making sure that the translation remained faithful to the original text while also being engaging for English readers. Overall, this task taught me that literary translation is not only about linguistic accuracy but also about preserving the emotions, tone, and cultural meaning of the original work so that readers can enjoy a similar reading experience.
So, by reflecting on this translation task, my biggest takeaway was realizing that translation is never just a mechanical, word for word substitution, but it is also a complex and rewarding process for cultural mediation. Basically, our central challenge was finding the precise sweet spot between preserving the authentic Malaysian soul of the text and ensuring seamless readability for a global audience. So, working through highly localized elements taught me how to think critically about strategy. For instance, deciding how to handle the honorific Cikgu Mahani or the vivid idiom Kerang Busuk forced us to look beyond dictionary definitions and focus on the actual emotional and social impact of our words. By implementing foreignization, allow us to honor and protect the source culture's identity, while strategies like idiomatic adaptation and modulation ensured the final English dialogue retained a natural, snappy, and engaging cadence. So ultimately, this assignment didn't just sharpen my linguistic and analytical skills, it completely shifted my perspective on how deeply language is intertwined with culture. So it basically made me realize that a successful translator must act as a bridge between two worlds. Moving forward into my future academic and professional projects, I feel much more confident in my ability to critically evaluate texts, defend my linguistic choices, and thoughtfully navigate these nuanced culture gaps. That's all from me. Thank you.